Welcome to the Dwayne Kerrigan podcast, and I'm your host, Dwayne Kerrigan. With 35 years in business and close to 30 ventures across 12 industries, I've seen a lot. Amid the celebrity allure of entrepreneurship, many exceptional entrepreneurs remain shadowed. Here, I team up with these hidden talents to unveil their challenges and successes. Dive in with me to unearth entrepreneurial gems, learn from our experiences, and get educated. Hey guys, welcome to the show. This is the second conversation that we had with Jim Ritter, who is doing 3D housing printing, trying to develop, perfect, innovate that whole process. If you didn't catch the first conversation, go back to last week. You may not be in the building industry or business, but this is more than just that conversation. This is a conversation about innovation. This is a conversation about different thinking. So please go back to last week, listen to the conversation, whether you're in the building, construction trade or not, or influenced by it. There's a whole different level of meaning and thinking that comes from this conversation. So listen to last week, come back to this week. We appreciate you so much. Thank you, God bless, and we hope to see you soon. From a materials cost, like concrete's not getting cheaper, or at least
no, neither is labor or anything else.
So does it create a large amount of concrete? Like, are you seeing the cost coming down from a labor or from a materials standpoint?
Not yet, because 3D print material is a custom material, and a couple companies have made the product and put it on the shelf until the industry grows. The product I use, Latticrete, they decide as a company not to go that way, and they stopped making their material, which was one of the best materials out there. They said they couldn't get one of the raw material products that really made their material good. So it's a little like cars and roads. Which came first? Well, it was the car. And then everybody said, well, I got a nice car, but I'm tired of going down this muddy horse track, so build me a road. So the demand from people owning cars to expand created roads. Roads didn't create cars.
Right.
And so as people buy the machines, what are they going to do? They're going to say, well, that machine cost me $500,000. Now, if I put in, I'm just making up a number, but if I put in, 400 tons of concrete through it, I make X. Well, you can bet he's going to put 500 tons concrete through it to make Y.
Right.
That's human nature.
Yep.
So as the machines get out there and they start to see the profits and everything works out, then you're going to see the demand. Then the guy down the road is going to say, all right, I can't get any masons anymore. So he's going to go get a machine. These are shell contractors and that. And then the developers are going to say, well, and I can say this for a fact. I mean, I think the large project we built sold for $4 million 2 weeks on the market. The guy walked in and said, this is so well built, I got to buy it. Those are his words, not mine. I can get him, Randall Fick. He bought.
This is the farm.
Yep, he bought that like that.
I have not said this yet, but I was in the facility. When you walk in it, like you can feel when you walk into a really good house versus a house that's not built well. The windows are shuffling. The floors are creaking. You go up and down the stairs. Like you see this, but it was amazing to me how impressively built that whole place is. Like it's unreal.
Yeah, and but like what I was going to say is Clay Street went on the market, sold right away, $240,000 in a $60,000 comp area. In other words, they're going to find that when you print with 3D, whether it costs you a little more or not is irrelevant because you're going to make more.
Right.
And these are actual numbers, actual facts, which is what I like to deal with. They're not me extrapolating, I think you can sell it for more. No, this is what happened. On a very limited scale. I mean, obviously, the more you print that, but I've heard this throughout the industry. First of all, people like, 3D. He likes it, If you want to buy a 3D printed house versus a regular house and you had the cash, what would you buy?
Well, and so when you look at this too, I kind of part of what I'm thinking here as we're chatting, is the as you're building, like I guess to your car and road example, yeah, they started making roads, but when they really started to develop roads, highways, expressways, was when industry started using them at a higher level. And so how do you get...
Oh, in the military.
Yeah. So
they went to Germany and they saw the Autobahn, which was built to move troops and everything. And the Russians are still using rail and getting killed by the Ukrainians. But so there's always a twist to everything. And we sold one machine to the military. The military is going to have a use. But to answer your question, and is I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
In other words, there's always a tipping point. Right now you have a vacuum of machines. And so first we have to, when I got into the game, as you said, I was old enough to know better. I was, 69? So I was 64 when I got into this game. And I decided, because I was building here, and I was going to sell some properties. And money has to work just like everything else. You know that. If your money's not working. And I said, where do I go with this money? And I did, and obviously you got to put it in something you understand. I understand real estate and building. And because we had been building some stuff, I'd left the horse industry, and I knew it wasn't working. And I looked at the future of building, and I said, and I happened, this little village here decided to sue me over the Right to Farm Act. I don't know if you know this, but I'm the only one to beat them. And it's, Wellington versus Loppy West, which is my company, and one of them, and I won. And so you can build a non-residential agricultural building outside the Florida Building Code. That gave me a niche to jump into 3D CP.
Right.
Because the joke is, I was right, they sued me, cost me $250,000. I win, but I don't get a dime because it's the village of Wellington. And so they're playing a game too. So I got a lot of money out there to say, well, how am I going to recover it? So I jumped into this game with this money, and knowing that I could build in what you saw, nobody could stop me. And so I could perfect a new industry because I had a niche. I'm not totally insane. Mm-hmm. But I wanted to adapt and not just be a traditional builder because I really think that's a dinosaur.
Yeah, I agree.
And it goes back to your question, well, what is the tipping point? Well, if I knew that, I wouldn't be sitting here. I'd be a multi-trillionaire.
Well, but I think but one of these pieces, like to me in this conversation is innovation, right? It's like, in order to evolve, you've got to market and innovate. That keeps you relevant in the marketplace. And so you're innovating the technology.
No, but you have to be practical. That's what everybody forgets. They're all running before. This is what I don't like about today's culture. They're all marketing, and they're all making up words. A guy told me, I have a 1911. I said, what's a 1911? Well, he was talking about a Colt 45, which actually was invented for the U.S. military around 1890 in the Cuban, when we went down to Spanish-American War. But he called it 1911. Everybody has a name for everything. I don't even know what it's not English. And they're innovating and they're marketing. It has to be practical. No, but it has to work.
But that's what I'm saying. You're innovating a machine, like you personally, my takeaway on this and my understanding is that you're innovating a machine that is for the purpose of improvement, to get rid of the waste, to get rid of the headaches, the difficulties, to make it more seamless to build. And that innovation is what kind of starts to lead to, being able to, for the military to say, hey, this can work because we don't have to move 80 tons of metal or, the gantry system that you talked about. We can mix at the head. We don't have all these
They load it on a C-130. Yeah, they fly into war zone. I printed a lot of walls for them to blow up over here and, on the Panhandle, the Tyndall Air Force Base. I printed a bunch of walls for them, and I don't have their data. They did some R calculations for us, but bottom line is they want to load these machines on, go to a war zone, print walls that people can duck behind. Makes sense. Build barracks. So the military use of our systems is going to, every military is playing with it. I know the guys in India, the Indian Army is building barracks. The French Army, I know, is doing it. Our military is big into 3D printing. There's, not just concrete. But what I mean by practical is there is a phase in any growth. You'll get tired of me. I'm an old man. I'm going to tell a story.
No, okay.
All right. When was the dishwasher in your house invented?
Before I was born, I'm going to
Yeah,
guess.
that's true. When was the dishwasher invented?
60s?
1890s, by a woman who's tired of washing dishes. She had no rights back then. Women didn't have rights then. And she said, and it's the same. What she invented, maybe in a larger scale, but it's the same dishwasher design that you see today under your counter. All right? And she invented that, and she got all these prizes at some fair in Chicago. I think that was 1904. Again, don't quote, my memory's not so good anymore.
It's interesting.
And then basically she had to have a man go around with it to market her invention. This is typical of women who've invented a lot of things and men take credit. Great culture we have. And she invented this thing and ended up selling to restaurants and hotels because of the labor problems, getting dishwashers and everything else. But she never made a lot of money. You said 50s and 60s. Why did the dishwasher become big in 50s and 60s? That's when the houses had good plumbing.
Yeah. Oh.
That's when you had plumbing with pressure and that where you could just hook them up and go. And there was, after the war, the women had been doing all the heavy lifting in the air plants and that. And then they went back and they said, look, we worked with machines over here. They wanted innovation also. They didn't want to go back. Have you ever seen an old washing machine or something? Yeah. With the crank? Yeah, you don't want to.
That was going to be my answer. Was when during the war, women went to work, men went to war, obviously, and then they.
But mostly it was what you're asking about. A lot of other things had to fall into place. 1890. My mother was cleaning out in the 30s in Canada on the farm gas lamps, cleaning the glass.
Mm-hmm.
Because electricity hadn't really come in. I mean, electrification of us came a lot in the 40s and 50s, and so there's a lot of other innovations that go into an invention. In other words, we know we need houses and everything, but like her invention, obviously she died long before it became in every household in the country. So you just don't know when this innovation, or you call it, or this practical use machine will be used everywhere.
Interesting.
I think, though, like the electric car came back, we had electric cars in 1900. So here's another anecdote. The average speed in London was 4 miles an hour around 1900. Horses and that, mostly horses. What's the average speed in London today?
It's got to be
about the same.
4 miles an hour?
560. You got traffic jam.
Mm.
So innovation is a weird thing. But to stay on our topic, I think 3D-CP is going to be logarithmic. It's going to go much faster than, the dishwasher thing and that. And it meets a business timeline where after 40 years of 3D printing, he uses it. It's everywhere. We just need practical now. We know we can do it. We just need the practical aspects of it. The trained work group, machines that don't break, machines that work no matter what happens, and are practical for your use.
Well, and so into that, because earlier you mentioned, you've talked to people in Australia, you've talked to people all over the world. Demand is everywhere.
Correct.
Housing, we're in the biggest housing crisis worldwide,
Correct.
Like bar none. So there's this pent-up demand. One of the things I was thinking about earlier is like, from what you're seeing and you're experiencing over the last several years, to me it seems like either government has to get behind this and support it, or get out of the way from it and start to kind of open up the avenues for. Obviously, you've got to have governance of some sort when it comes to building, but where do you see the biggest opportunities on that end?
I don't like government. The government, I've talked to so many people. Here's a good thing with the housing industry. You're in the government, and they have a meeting 2 years ago and say it's going to cost this much per square foot for low-income housing, and that's what we're going to pay. Then 2 years later, prices have doubled your cost of building.
Yeah.
And this is a real example. And you go to them and they go, oh, we want to use 3D printing. I say, all right, it's this much a foot. Well, no, we're only going to pay this. Well, now they got to go back and have all these meetings again and do this and that. They can't react. Mm-hmm. And I give Elon Musk credit. He said, look, he bought the company Tesla. He didn't invent any of this. And he said, people will want these cars because of the practicality of it. And he did it. And people want it. And the government they did have that $7,500 incentive, and I have one. We don't have enough charging stations. We don't have the infrastructure. But 3% of your autos are electric, and it's growing. Mm-hmm. Because people like them. I like them.
Yep.
They're useful. Long trips, okay, they're not the best. But for local driving, they're fantastic.
They're amazing, yeah.
And I don't go to the gas station and it's better for the environment. Yeah, not that they're green, they're polluting too, but still better than, putting carbon out there, which I think a lot of people buy them for. I can't speak to that. But with 3D printing, you have so many factors, the insurance factors, labor factors, cost factors, and that, just driving robotics. And everybody is out there doing their best to innovate. The problem with most of the guys innovating, they've never worked in the field. We're one of the few groups that did it in the field first. Most people invented their machine and then tried to adapt it to the field. Mm. We took a machine, worked it in the field, and said, this doesn't work. It's all documented. It's all on YouTube. We weren't that crude to say it didn't work, but we said, okay, here, we did it. But then, I'm sitting here telling you the truth. And so now we're saying, all right, how can we, do the same thing better? And what kind of machine, how does the machine has to be designed so it fits what we're doing? And that's the state. We call it the second generation. We've had the first generation, and God bless, that was great. Because without that, we wouldn't have this knowledge.
Right.
And I knew that jumping in. I literally bought the machine. I bought some intercoastal property. I said to my wife, this is going to cover my butt when I have this machine printing septic tanks, because I didn't have a clue.
Yeah.
But I knew enough that I could, make back that $500,000 that I forked out, because she thought I was insane. And, it didn't work out that way. The property did triple in value because of COVID and all that. And so I made out there. But the whole industry didn't evolve as I had saw it. If you had talked to me in 2019, and my viewpoint now, it's totally different. Mm-hmm. And it evolved in a totally, and this always happens.
Can you share a little bit, on the mindset about that, and then the experience side of it, especially for listeners who, things pivot. You've got to pivot. The original plan never goes as planned. Like that, it hardly ever. I don't even know if I've ever heard it of happening ever in my business career or in anybody else's that I know. But being able to see, that road ahead start to turn to the right or to the left, and then what are your skill sets in terms of pivoting?
Well, through screwing up a lot of times in my life, mm-hmm. and I'm very good at screwing up.
Also,
so I wanted to keep everything what we call plastic. The real English term for plastic is very adaptable or mobile or whatever. So I wanted a plastic group, and my original intention, and I was a distributor for Cobalt, was to sell machines, not to do building. I actually detest building. It's as we've said in this thing, it's a pain in the butt. All the different personalities and people you have to deal with to do a very simple job. They make it difficult. It ain't that hard to build a house, a good house. Obviously, if you leave it to the average person, he's going to cheat, not build a good house, and sell it as, just look at Florida building. But to build a house is very simple. He said, we can build a house pretty simple, a very nice one.
Yep.
But in order to control people and make sure everything is done right so people don't kill people, because that's just human nature, if they can cheat in sport, building, business, they're going to cheat. That's just humans. So that. It's not being mean. It's just that's life. So I want to be very plastic when I started. So the concept was they've done 5, 6, 7 years of work when I bought their number 5 machine. And they gave me a base to say, all right, what is the information I need? Well, how am I going to get that information? Well, I had to build. So instead of, we call them flower pots, printing little things and squigglies and fancy, print your name or that, I built a tractor shed. We drew it out on a napkin. I did ask an engineer on the tie beam. Other than that, I just built it. And it came out very well, actually. And I wouldn't let anything be advertised about it until we built it. And when we did, everybody went, oh my God, because it was 780 square feet. And at that time, that was a large 3D structure. Everybody's, was amazed that we could even do it. But we learned a lot. But by 23, at the end of the very large print, the same problems are being redundant. And we're running into them every time we start up the machine. You got to say to yourself, all right, this ain't working.
Right.
And so it's not rocket science. Those factors, as we printed, I'm not saying it changed the initial plan, and I can look back on my paperwork, but you have to obviously adapt and say, all right, if you had said in 2019, the problem with 3D printing is hoses and pumps and hoses. And I must admit, we took 5.5 months to do the tractor shed because it took us a long time to figure out how to make the material come out of the other end right. We made a lot of problems. And actually, to be honest, because we were printing this material and it was too brittle because we were doing it wrong on tests, that's when I came up with the post and beam idea. I said, I'm not building this thing and using this as structural because I don't trust it 10 years from now.
Right.
And I'm putting my tractors in it and everything. So that's when the post and beam idea came about. That to me is not adapting. That's just, dealing with what you have. I mean, with the horses, we always said, you ride the wave you're on, not the one you want. In other words, everybody has a vision of that, when we envision ourselves doing something, we're all this top athlete, Michael Jordan and that. But I'm 5'6", I don't look like Michael Jordan, I can't move like Michael Jordan, and I can't dunk the basketball. So, our vision of ourselves as humans and our reality are very different. And I like to deal with, I was raised by a scientist, I was raised with facts. One of the problems with our society today, it's driving me nuts, is it's not fact-based. People get on YouTube, make a statement, it's cheaper and faster, 3D print. Nobody checked it.
Right.
I get calls every day. Well, I thought you were 40% cheaper. How can we? We're not even scaled up.
Right.
So the journey in anything, I don't care whether it's education, his life or your life, is never linear. And you always end up where you never thought you would. I never thought I'd be doing 3D printing. The irony is my father had one of the first electron scanning microscopes ever built. And the state of New York bought it for him, and he did that. And so now I'm doing this. I don't know, maybe that's genetics, but other than that, I can't explain it to you.
No, I love this. The saying you just said: "Ride the wave you're on, not the one you want." And so, it's a phenomenal. I haven't heard that saying in a long time, actually. And
yeah, but it's reality.
So
you
true.
can bang your head all you want about the one you want.
Yeah.
But if you just deal with what you have in front of you, and everything is minute. A world famous horseman trainer, Olympic trainer, used to always say, because I was a blacksmith, he says, God Jim, it's not banging with a hammer. It's like building a watch about my riding. And he's right. Everything is minute. You make minute changes in the way you deal with your money. Like, instead of spending it all eating out, you take that money and half of it you eat out and half you put away. It's a very small change. But you'd be amazed at how much money you have after 10 years. And you just put it away. And you know that, how money works. Or any, you have a weight problem. Well, you say, all right, I'm only going to eat 2 times a day and I'm going to run. And all of a sudden your running gets to be fun and you start to run more and more. It was that minute change that brings you to here. It's not a big change. Very little times in life is it a big thing. It's always these little changes that you do. I'm a vegetarian now. I gave up eating meat in my 30s because I could be a very big guy, heavy, and I wanted to ride horses. And by not eating meat for years, and then I ate fish for a long time, but now I'm a pure vegetarian. Those minute changes, looking back on it, really put me in a whole different path. So no matter, this is kind of a really weird thing, but the universe works that way. You do something in the universe, it's going to impact something else. We go out and blow up a star or do something, we don't know what we're doing, but I guarantee you we'll probably screw up 10 galaxies.
Right.
And humans have been doing it. Cut down the wrong tree. And all of a sudden you've created an ecosystem backlash that we didn't intend. That's the problem with building. We do so much in building that we don't know the consequences. But that's just life. And,
yeah, that's
that's why I go back to science and education and studying and that. And I have these views, but if I could live that long, in 100 years, I might say, boy, was I stupid. Maybe because I didn't know the facts. Maybe I took the facts and read them totally wrong. But this idea that you look back and you should have known at 21. So I graduated 73. And then I got a ticket to Vietnam, but I didn't have to go, so I was very happy. 65 was my draft. And I worked shoeing, riding horses and that and then I said, I'm going to be a vet. So then I went to Dartmouth Ivy League school. So if you had told me, my 1973 person, that I would be in Dartmouth as a 20-year-old, and then I also had a horse business going, and I started importing horses. I was one of the first ones importing European horses as I'm going to Dartmouth. That was a little crazy. So I'm going to Dartmouth for medicine, and then if you told that 20-year-old Ritter, the 40-year-old Ritter, who's sitting in Sweden with a new wife and dealing horses out of Sweden, and then, you get to the 69-year-old and he's 3D CP printing, I would have told you at all those times, you're nuts, I'll never do that.
Yeah, I'm sure if you would have said to your 60-year-old self, you wouldn't have been 3D printing.
Well, I was heading towards building. But in other words, things lead you in different ways, and I think everybody's life journey is like that. That is the cool thing about humans. They do a lot of crazy things. I meet people and I'm going, I got a friend of mine jumped out of airplanes with a boogie board on it, Peter Dagefeld, is Blue Sky SE. He's now in Arizona. They built Da Vinci's parachute. They do these IMAX films. He does this filming, with this gyro so that it doesn't, it's amazing crap.
Yeah.
He's nuts. His journey's, insane.
Yeah, I think there is this serendipity to people's life journey, but I also think that there is a courage and a strength, which
stupidity.
Well, or stupidity, could be stupidity too, or a combination of the both, which from getting to know you and talking to you is the thing that I've become to appreciate, the whatever you want to call it, the moxie, the courage, the ability to be able to reinvent yourself along the way from what you've done, and even like coming from being in horses, which was a big part of your career for many, many, many years, and then going into this, and it's like I mean, truthfully, Jim, it's inspiring.
I always did building, but I did it because I needed mentally a change.
Yeah.
And I did go to a school, pretty good school, I think, for medicine. So, I did, at one time I was going to use, and that is intriguing. I mean, medicine, our bodies, I would have been a vet, but, when we look at these machines that we're playing with, they are nothing compared to our bodies.
Yeah.
And we treat our body like crap.
Yeah, true.
And, we don't appreciate the fact that we just get up in the morning and breathe. We don't have machines as complex as us. We're going that way. They talk AI, but, I mean, if whoever invented life and created, and not just humans, but any life form, trees. We walk by a tree every day. It is the most amazing thing. And without trees,
we wouldn't live.
Yeah. I mean, without photosynthesis, we're done. Mm-hmm. Humans always talk this great story about it's me, 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 me. We are just, and so that's, for me, I had to, and I still ride, and it's fun, but at some time, I think everybody has to make a career change that's so different, where you use parts of your body that you didn't use, and mine was my brain. I needed something to get a hold of. And I think that's a lot of people. I think that's what we are allowed to do today. People can make more career changes and get into different things today than 100 years ago, I'd still be shoeing horses.
So it is. I think you're right. It is a lot of people, but it's also not a lot of people. And I'm curious, what are because I'd hate to get out of this conversation and go, God, I wish I would have asked Jim. Like, for people who are listening, what are the tips, the tactics, the strategies, the mindset that has allowed you to flex and move? And because you could have gone into building. You've done building before. I get that. But you could have gone into traditional building because that's what you know, that's what you have confidence in. But instead, you chose something like in 2019. I'm not sure if people understand that, but I mean, I'm pretty on top of technology, and I think I've heard about 3D printing somewhere in 2021, maybe 2020, just kind of like, it was very new.
Yeah, we were number 8 out of, I think we were 8th out of 10 companies when we started, rated. Now we're 8th out of 400 companies, right. 5 years later.
And you did it at 64 years old. Or 60.
Yeah, but that was part of the calculus. In other words, when you calculate a new venture, you got to have the risks and the rewards, obviously. And I realized that I had to jump in then, because I have limited means, very early in the equation to, obviously I didn't do it to lose money.
Yep.
I did it to make money, but to get into it with the limited resources I had, I felt that I had to jump in then. That was a calculated risk. Just as to cover that risk, I bought land that I knew I could sell. I didn't realize it would triple in value. No one knew that. I thought, like a lot of people, when COVID hit, that prices would drop, actually. But I knew I could build a building on it and save almost as much by doing owner-builder. I mean, these are all calculated risks. Yep. In other words, I calculate, all right, if I do a big house there, and for the cost, I think it was $700 a square foot, 5,000 square feet, 3.5 million, just rough numbers. A GC is going to be 40% of that. This is how I think. So what's that, 1.2 million, or goes to his pocket. But I can do owner builder, hire my subs, play with this machine, and I cover the cost of my machine.
Right.
That was totally calculated. Get back my $500,000, stick it in a building, print septic tanks. So it was a mitigated risk. I'm not totally crazy. But if the risks work out, like the purchase of that land, I like to buy on water. I always feel safe buying on water. I've done very well that way. There's certain ways to buy property and stuff. So you mitigate your risks. To just go off and do something, well, get you killed. But if you're a person who just wants to make a change and you weigh your pros and cons in an honest way, you don't pretend you're something you're not. I think a lot of people can say, yeah, okay, I have these assets, I have this, and I want to do that, and I can do this. Yeah, you can easily change your
trajectory.
Yeah, I mean, like Robert Frost. I walked down, what was that? Fork in the road. I went down the one less traveled by. It's misquoted for what he was talking about, but I mean, guy's from Vermont. You wouldn't have thought he was a pretty burly guy. I mean, you wouldn't think he was a poet. Right. I mean, what makes a poet? What makes a great artist? What makes anyone go off in a different direction? I don't know. I think a lot of people do more than people get credit for it. In the old days, my mother, I think, was 20, 21. And, my dad came out of the service and, they were married for a long time, but it was, hey, we're going to have kids. You're going to do this. We do this. Now you're going to retire.
Yep.
But that mold hopefully goes away with education and people go, yeah, so I'm 60. Well, I still can get up in the morning, still can ride a buck on a horse, so I'm going to, go as long as I can.
Yeah.
And I think that's a different attitude of, instead of, oh, I'm 60 now, I'm going to crawl in a hole, which I'm not against anyone who's worked hard their whole life and they say, screw it, I'm going on the beach. I'm lying on the beach every day and drinking a can of beer.
Yeah.
I have no problem with that.
Yeah, if that's your mission. Great.
Yeah, that's your mission. That's cool. But there's more and more people realize that that's kind of boring in my book, but if that's your thing, that's fine. But, okay, I've worked my whole life. Maybe I'm not as productive as I was, but I can do this at a fairly high level. Consulting, painting, whatever floats their boat. I mean, I'd hate to have been the guy who told Bill Gates that computers were stupid back when he did it in his garage. Mm-hmm. I remember the old gas station Ben and Jerry's started in Burlington, Vermont. I was shooting, that was the big thing. Ben and Jerry's up in Burlington, early 70s, I think it was. I was at the first Hard Rock on the corner in London. We went there. I thought the hamburgers were too expensive. I said, what a stupid place.
But it worked out.
So there's so many opportunities, but I'm not advocating just head off,
half cocked.
Yeah.
I'm curious, what would you advocate like to people, and even in your industry? Well, if you had, whether we've been talking with Jacob here, who's helping us produce today, and or some young kid in construction, and not necessarily a kid, doesn't have to be a kid, could be any age really, but if you were, what would be, I don't want to say advice, but what are some of the possibilities that you see for a team up of a construction-minded individual and a tech individual, and what are the possibilities in 3D in the future, and how would you?
Well, I think they made it too, like, that in a lot of projects you see it. You see 50 engineers on. That's another thing we did. We hired normal construction people on our jobs. You don't need more than a CAD and basically what you learned in high school. You don't need to be a rocket science. I mean, all the work is done. And I had a meeting before this, and the guy says, AI, you can do a lot of programming through AI and stuff today, just with the AI we have today, which is fairly new. So if somebody's into construction and they want to go in a different direction from the way their dad did it, and it's already happening, I see guys do it, it's mostly the younger guys. Some guys from Guatemala came, and their father was traditional, and the kid said, hey, come, talk to us. I don't know if they bought a machine or not, but it's all there. It's just evolving. And their questions are always the same. Dad's saying, hey, I'm making this much %. And the son's saying he can't verify the numbers. So dad's saying, you can't do this. But still in the back of his head, And, that's usually the mitigating factor. They're already making more money in that. But there's a lot of guys who want to do this, but they have no money. And I get calls and I go, well, how much do you have? Well, I got $100,000. I said, well, forget, you don't have enough to get in this game.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're going to have not just your machine costs, but you're going to have to train your crew. You got to build up the job level and everything else. So it's happening as we speak, but the more units out there printing, the more it's going to happen. It's going to be logarithmic, but it's already happening. And most kids today who are doing anything, farming, construction, you name it, they have enough tech savvy. Not our generation or my generation, but their generation. They're all got enough knowledge to do this stuff. It's not an issue.
And what would it cost to get yourself situated and set up to do this?
Well, most machines cost about $500,000.
They do.
Yeah, and that's a sizable thing. We're going to try to have financing available. We're looking into that to get more machines out there where we can get a financing mechanism where people can pay over time. Because obviously, if your machine is paying you over time, and so you have a return on investment. So say you pay $500,000 and the machine has a shelf life of 10 years, and you're making $100,000 a year off it, but 50 is going to the replacement model, whatever. Mm-hmm. Well, now that's beautiful. Now you can buy 2 machines or whatever. So giving that mechanism is going to help growth. So you got the people who want to do it but don't have the capital, and you have the people who are in the industry, like the father-son thing, where they're told, hey, we've done it this way until I die, or you take over.
Yeah.
You ain't doing it any other way.
Be. Yeah.
And there's a lot of truth in that. And then, of course, you have those with a lot of money who are sitting and waiting. And what they're doing is waiting for it to really explode. And then they can walk in, because they have the money, and buy out everybody or buy into the game, and there's no risk. It's like the housing, like if you have a downturn, you don't want to buy at the bottom. You want to wait until the housing prices start to come up.
Right.
Then you want to buy. And you don't want to wait to the top because you don't know where that is. So you want to sell at some point. This was taught to me by somebody smarter than me. But it's the same with any industry. Most people, if you have the capital, sit and wait. God bless you, you're cool. I didn't have that depth of wealth. So I wanted to jump in early. Yes, I took the greater risks, calculated risks, I want to take it. But I'm going to, I hope to get the rewards. But for somebody just in construction, they're in the same problems. You got to pick your poison. Mm-hmm. But there's a lot more people who could jump in now who are hesitant. A machine costs a lot of money today. A good construction machine, $300,000-$400,000. So $500,000 ain't that bad.
No.
But it's about financing and everybody's thing. And it's like any time you go into business, any business, if you can't sleep at night, you're in the wrong level. Some people need a paycheck every week. If they don't get a paycheck, they can't go out there and wait for their money. They just don't have the stomach for it. Well, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Go work for somebody. If you're a little crazy like me, and honestly, the irony with me is I don't care that much. I never look. My wife drives her nuts. I never look at the bottom line. If I do a project, I build it the way I want, and then I look if I made money or not.
Right.
Which is not smart. I'm not telling you that's smart. I'm just saying that's the way I do things. So when I get into a project like this, I'm just throwing in the capital to get the job done. And then I usually have been lucky enough that by doing it that way, I've come out on top. But I think a lot of people, I heard this the other day, it's some old commercial, but it's very true. If you say you can, or you say you can't, you'll be true in both.
Yeah,
You've heard that.
I have.
So you talk yourself out of doing things because you say, oh, well, it's cost too much money, or it's too hard, or it's too well, okay, you're done. But if you go and do it every day and do little things every day a bit, you'll find that you get there pretty fast.
Yeah, small things consistently done over time.
Yeah, don't go for the big picture, you know? I mean, I thought my machine would be out in 8 months. What did I tell you? January of 24, and what are we now?
Moving into January of
9.
2026.
So that's 21 months.
Yeah.
I'm a little over time.
Yeah. When do you think it'll be out?
I'm hoping 3 to 4 months. But
Okay.
we had some, issues as always, supply chain, software. People are slow, driving me nuts.
Yeah.
But that's just the way anything, again, no matter what you do, it's always later. So, no, it's a fun journey. And I think for the young generation, there's programming of these, G-coding, slicing, programming new programs for these machines. There's engineering. There's architecture. The architects love this. It's free form. That's freedom of design is one of the great things with these machines. You can do 20 houses in a row, and the facade of every front house could change, and it wouldn't cost you a dime more because the machine, you just program it.
Right.
Well, it might cost you more in material because you had extra curves or, like Gaudi in Barcelona. But if you went that route, you could do it. I mean, it's an immense possibilities compared to the negatives, so.
And then, are you guys able to do roof systems? You don't do roof systems.
No, we don't. Maine has come out with a resin-based roof system that I haven't seen, but Maine University, and they've done some boats with this same printer, and I'll butcher the company's name of that printer. I can never remember it. Ingersoll Rand, I think, but I could be wrong. Anyway, you can see on YouTube them printing a boat, and they've done a roof system that I've been told about, but I haven't seen it on the market yet.
So resin meaning fiberglass?
It's a resin sawdust mix.
Oh.
And it's supposed to have, like when a wood truss would say be a 1 shear, this is supposed to have double the strength of the shear, which means for it to break out of those straps, it would take twice the wind force.
Oh.
And I don't know the fire resistance in that. They're supposed to integrate solar into those systems, do away with the membrane, I've heard, so that you don't have to put tile on and everything. But then that gets into aesthetics. People won't like the aesthetics because they're so used to seeing one thing. So in building, oftentimes there's as much cultural as there is, practicality.
Practicality, right. Sorry, before we forget, it just reminded me when we were just talking about, the sawdust and resin, and you mentioned Mars earlier and what Icon is doing up there.
Well, they're not there yet.
They're not there. Oh, sorry, what they would like to do up there. Thank you. So what does that look like?
Well, actually, I was in India researching a machine, and I didn't like it, so I left. And India is a funny country, and ironically, it was a city that my father taught in 60 years about to the day that I went there before, in the early 60s. He went to Chennai and taught at the university there. And, you'll see cows and everything because they're Hindus in the streets, and you'll see people walking around with buckets of cement and whatever on their head and, looking like, 10 BC. And then you're in this university and you go into a room, and I said, I said, look, I don't understand this printing on other planets because there's no way they have water. It's not going to work. I said, well, that's not how they do it. And he had been working in Germany, and he showed me a film. And with the German system, they took concentrated sunlight. It wasn't a laser, but 2,000 degrees. And they melted sand in about 1/4 inch layers. then they're not going to do it like the bigger layers and that has a much higher bond ratio than calcium and the silicon bond. And then you just layer that, and then all of a sudden you have a wall and a roof, and then that's how they're going to do it. So they need the sunlight. They need concentrated sunlight. So I don't know how they're going to do it on the dark side of the moon, or some source to create heat, and they're going to melt it.
Wow.
Which is cool.
And then do they get, so when we've talked in the past about R value, so if they develop the same kind of system with a pocket of air in between and seal
I
it.
have no idea. That I couldn't answer because as I understand, Mars is 20 degrees minus Celsius, like Canada.
Yep.
I had to throw that in.
That's good. That's perfect.
I don't know how they're going to insulate, and I don't know if they're going to do interior walls within these. Like these walls withstand storms and stuff like that, but they build like most building is layered walls. You do the block and then you fur it in. I can't answer that.
Yeah.
I don't know how they're going to do that. You have obviously you have weightlessness. You don't have the same gravity that we have. I don't know what Mars gravity is. I couldn't answer that.
Yeah.
Gravity has a huge thing to do with building. Yeah, there's so many things that they don't know until they do it.
Right.
So that'll be interesting. But I think that won't be my lifetime. I think that's something,
Yeah, I don't know if it'll be my lifetime either.
Until I see a planet with trees and animals and that, I don't want to go there.
Right. I'm with you.
That's me.
I'll be okay.
I like nature, and so, I haven't seen one tree on Mars, the films I've seen.
Yeah.
But
I might go for a quick visit, but that'll be it. I don't know.
no, I have no interest. Sit in a tin can for hours.
That's far out there. But I mean, it is when you start to look at these technologies, right? If they didn't start 3D printing concrete, then this is the kind of.
Oh, they can do it. They can get you to Mars. But imagine you get on the ship and you realize you don't like the people you're with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You're stuck. That's it.
The big catapult there is going to be robots. Like it's,
And we're doing, Boston. What's the name of the robotics in Boston?
Boston Dynamics.
Yeah. I mean, what they've done, the best example is the Ukraine war. They have those little doggies coming in with machine guns, and they have, they have C-bots. They have, because the military tends to short circuit all the crap because they need it. Ukraine was desperate to offset the military weight of Russia. And they have accelerated drones, and they have the sea drones and these robotics, and then now it's scary. I'm not condoning any of that, but what I'm saying is we have the technology to do a lot more than we do. That's every generation has that technology. The telephone came out 1880, but it wasn't around until 1913, 14 that you saw enough lines and enough telephones. I mean, so the technology is always way ahead of the people of the time.
Yeah.
And that's just normal.
There's a demand curve that has to get created for it in order for it to become economically possible.
But with computers, with AI and that curve is it being accelerated. So I'm married to a Swedish woman. My Swedish is terrible. But now they've come out with these ear things where if both people have them, do you speak another language or? No, you're like, that's an American, speaks one language. Yeah. Just so you know that.
That's right. Europeans usually speak at least two.
Yeah, and they do because, Swedish, who speaks Swedish? But so you got to learn English as a young kid. But now they have it where if you were speaking Spanish to me, like that's most work crews, I could actually get a clue. I mean, I'm not sure how good the translations are, but with these new earpods or that, they have it. We could have a conversation.
Yeah, we use it. I use it almost every day. My partner in one of the businesses I just bought here in Wellington, he speaks Spanish, and so he wears one, and so that's how we translate.
Pretty amazing.
And
huh?
it's amazing. It's amazing. It works pretty well. But apparently, Apple actually in their new AirPods that they're going to be coming out with here shortly is going to have. I've heard like the best technology for that.
That's what I heard.
So it's going. Yeah.
That's going to be amazing. You know, I can remember in the 70s traveling in Europe, and you better know a language.
Yeah.
You know, and now, I mean, of course, we didn't have all the channels in that, but wouldn't that be great?
Oh, think of the adventure and that just opens up around the world.
Yeah, it opens everything up, and you don't. I'm an idiot when it comes to language. My mother, of course, from Montreal, could speak French. My father spoke German, Hungarian. His family came from Hungary. So, you know, some Japanese because he ended up there. And, yeah, I didn't know anything.
Yeah.
You know, I'm terrible at it. So when you see, I think, I mean, I don't know how many people have said this my age, but I would love to be 21. But with the knowledge I have.
Oh, wouldn't that be great?
Because,
I would love to have the knowledge you have at 21.
Yeah.
yeah, because, you know, there was some saying, I think youth was wasted on the young or something. But, yeah, I mean, the where the world is going, you know, forget the reactionary people who want to go backwards. Canada is now producing steel in a green way. It's the rule. And they can do it. Germany's doing it. Hydrogen-powered vehicles is going to, you know, be the next gasoline, you know, which is not going to pollute as bad. There's always pros and cons. You know, 3D printing with houses and robotics, and, you know, you're going to have your labor source is going to be robots. And everybody says, oh, that's terrible. No, it frees humans up, if we don't abuse it, to do more imaginative, better
Creative
things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Inevitable, I see.
Yeah, but then you get into all that sci-fi stuff and the dark side, and
Look,
who knows, you
there's
know?
a lot of noise out there. There's no question, and there's a lot of things happening around the world. But I agree with you. There has never been a time in the history of this world to be alive than right now. I mean, yes, there's some bad things going on, but there's always been bad things going on, and so this is a great time to be alive. It's exciting, and it's exciting to see forget about your age, but it's a factor, and it's like to sit down with somebody at 70 and you're innovating this type of technology and making a difference, and you are making a difference.
We're not
cool.
done yet. We got to get it out, and it's got to work.
Yeah, but
I
don't
believe
doubt
in
that.
practicality is the key to life. I mean,
Yeah.
but you know, it's fun. It's a lot of fun, and you know, what else am I going to do? You know,
It's a great way to
I
look
met
at
an
it.
old farmer once, and he said, "I don't drink and I don't womanize, but I built me a windmill." That was in Vermont. Vermonters are a little different, and I always liked that. He said, "Yep, he ain't chasing women, he ain't drinking, but he built himself. He had this big windmill on the hill long before windmills were a thing. This was back in the 70s." And so I think innovation is everywhere. It's just people are talked out of it.
Yeah.
People are worried about too many things, that what people think, what will happen.
The doom and gloom.
Yeah, the doom and gloom. And it's sad because there's so much innovation, you know. His generation, they're looking at it, oh, you know, and I've heard this, oh, we can't get jobs, we can't buy houses, and they're really talking themselves out of it instead of figuring a way to get it done.
Well, I think that's a good point. Like entrepreneurship there's going to be a revitalization of entrepreneurship because necessity is the mother of all invention.
Right.
And so I think we're going to see that. And Jim, I can't
Pleasure.
thank you enough for being on the show. This was
All
a
right.
fantastic conversation. You're awesome. And, guys, check Jim out. It's just his facility that he built here in Wellington is fantastic. How do they find you? Like it's Printed Farms LLC is your company.
Yeah, Printed Farms, you can see us on YouTube, you can see us on Instagram, you see all the films. You can drop me a line at info@printedfarms.com. And yeah, we hope to be, we've been kind of secretive for a year and a half, but when the machine comes out, we'll be making more noise and doing more things. But, we just had to get this job done.
Yeah.
And then, no, I appreciate you having me, and it was fun. And
I love what you're doing. And the facility you build is unbelievable. I've been there. I've seen it. It's really fantastic. So thanks, buddy. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
all right.
Thanks for listening. I appreciate you being with us. If you found value in the show and know a friend or coworker who could benefit from this conversation, please share the link via text or on social media. Remember, each share creates a ripple effect of knowledge and inspiration. And if this podcast has supported you in any way, please support us by clicking the follow or subscribe button. It helps us to improve the delivery of top quality content moving forward.
The views, information, or opinions expressed by guests during the Dwayne Kerrigan podcast are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent those of Dwayne Kerrigan and his affiliates. Dwayne Kerrigan or the Dwayne Kerrigan podcast is not responsible for and does not verify the accuracy of any of the information contained in the podcast series. The primary purpose of this podcast is to educate and inform. Listeners are advised to consult with a qualified professional or specialist before making any decisions based on the content of this podcast.